I knew it would never work as he had 3 kids, the oldest one being my age. Professionals, have you ever fallen in love with a client? What happened afterwards? God, this was years ago when I was 21, but it brings back a lot of emotions even now. One of my regulars was a disabled gentleman in his 50s. He had broken his spine in an industrial accident and was paralyzed from the chest down. He'd gotten a large settlement and invested in property, including his beautiful accessible cabin on the lake. He'd pay for me to spend weekends with him there, as well as trips to the coast and the casino, where he would give me money to play slots or see a show while he played cards. He was kind and funny and had a comforting nature. I had bad experiences with men, but his disability made him vulnerable and open in a way that moved me and put me at ease. I even learned some of his care routines so I could be with him for longer periods. He died when he developed a clot in his leg that broke free and got into his lungs. I didn't find out until 2 weeks afterward. His passing really shook me. I thought I had distance. I didn't realize how much I cared for him until he was gone. Using my throwaway. I was a sugar baby the moment I turned 18. Started having intercourse with a 60-year-old doctor. I was poor, so the constant showering of gifts, money, dinners, vacations, and clothes, I guess, made me fall in love with him. All I would think about was Lonnie and what amazing things Lonnie had planned for us that day. One day I get a call from Lonnie and he tells me, we can't see each other anymore, because he had caught feelings for me. I took this as my opportunity to tell him how I felt, and I really thought we would get married. He then told me, I can't be in love with a worker, so I have to let you go and move on to another girl I don't have feelings for. I was broken and depressed for a long time. I ended up using some of the money he gave me for therapy, and eventually I got over it. Former worker. When I was 18, I began seeing a married man in his early 40s who treated me with respect, genuinely listened and helped me with my school, and we hung out a lot too without sleeping with each other. After about 3 months of seeing him almost every day, I started to become attached. Then one day I told him that I thought I was in love with him, and he told me, I still love my wife. I only keep you around for your head game. I was devastated and never saw him again. A friend of mine's sister and her friend are workers. They both fell in love with the same customer. The bloke was a biker, and I'm pretty sure they loved the free drugs he gave them, not him. They had a huge blowout over this guy, and basically didn't take long before they stopped communicating. They both confessed their love for him, and he cut ties with both because he wanted to spend more time with his wife. From the customer side, I was in relationship with a worker, one of the best of my life. We met as you would imagine, but without going into too many details, she was different and I soon became obsessed. I would see her every chance I got. I was living in another country at the time, so had no real friends, and she helped me with a lot of things, getting an apartment set up and stuff like that. I hoped we were heading for more than a client-customer relationship, but did not want to jinx it. One day she did not take the money I left out, and when I pointed that out, she got upset and basically told me I was an idiot for not noticing that we were now in a relationship. She was a worker for a few months and mainly had regulars. After that it was just me and her. I loved her, and I know she felt the same about me. We were together for a little over a year, and even when we broke up we stayed friends. That was over 10 years ago, and we stayed in touch after. We have been on holiday together since. She has visited me at home. She has now moved back home, is running a successful business, and is getting married soon to a guy who really looks after her. I still care about her, and I'm glad that she is happy. I was sort of a sugar baby. He wasn't super wealthy and didn't shower me with luxury. I was freshly 18, he was 40. I met him through a mutual friend who initially thought nothing of it. Eventually we started hooking up in a very dominant way. He got me small gifts, clothes, makeup, jewelry, paid for my tattoos, paid for hotel stays, Disneyland, etc. We eventually got to know each other and realized we had a lot in common and got along well. We both knew it was a fantasy that couldn't last. Finally we admitted we had fallen in love. I knew it would never work as he had 3 kids, the oldest one being my age and the youngest one living with him still. He was also legally married, but they were separated. Eventually we parted ways as friends, but not a day goes by that I don't miss him or what we had. Yeah. I kept him at a distance cause I was scared of getting hurt. After COVID we started to hang out a lot. I freaked out and pulled back. Ignored him for a month. One day I get a text from him that he's leaving the country in 2 weeks cause his mom's health worsened and he may or may not be able to come back. He was in the US on a work visa. We spent those 2 weeks together. He left and I don't know if I'll ever see him again. Soon after he left, my body started feeling off, swollen lymph nodes, unexplained lumps and bruises. I've been through a million tests since, and the major cancers and any STIs have been ruled out. But I never got any answers for why my body is acting this way. Last I spoke to my doctor, I got referred to a therapist. She thinks I only have anxiety. I've seen a lot of family members die from cancer, and I feel I have it too, that I will show more symptoms and eventually be diagnosed with something that hopefully kills me quick. I deeply regret not spending time with him while I had the chance. If I'd known this is all the time I get to have, I would have spent it with him. I met him 2 years ago. I could have had 2 good years. I'm going to die alone with a lot of regrets. Also, because I'm a worker and all, I'm aware it's possible he never really cared for me. Or that he's married. I didn't find any evidence of it, and his actions spoke he did care, but you never know. I try not to think of it much cause that chapter of my life is closed. It doesn't really matter. I just want to know whether I'm sick from something serious or not. She looked me in the eye as she did it and then smiled at me and said, "Tastes like boyfriend material." I thought she was just saying that because I paid her $600, but our time behind the dumpster on the corner of E Broadway and Market Street was the last time I ever felt connected to someone. To this day I can't step foot in Chinatown or cross the Manhattan Bridge from Brooklyn without thinking of her. I can take the FDR though, because my mind is preoccupied with no one using their blinker. I was almost a John that hung out with a worker and she fell in love with. I met her out in public, offered to take her out to dinner. She confessed it in a text message, vaguely. Mostly said things got rough for her and she had to do things to make ends meet. She also said she stripped for a while, which isn't as bad in my opinion. Invited me over to hang out. Did not put my PP in her. Learned more about her through her friends. Took her out more times, nothing too fancy, but I couldn't shake the thought of 1,000 cranks going in there. And just started to shut her out. She got really emotional, said I don't look at her the same as other guys, asked me not to take this away from her, etc. etc. She was honestly out of my league still. I had this client who was hot. He's the hottest man I've ever been with. He had medium-length long black hair, a jawline that could cut glass, veiny arms like tree trunks, and he was comfortable enough in his masculinity to paint his nails black. The moment I met him I had the eyes for him. When we got to doing what he paid for, I was wondering which one of us the client really was. I was soaking before we'd even started and I climaxed from that once, and I actually finished a few times during the actual act, never had that before. By the time we were done my sheets looked like they'd be rained on and we changed them and I told him to stay. He made me breakfast in the morning and paid despite me insisting he got the night free of charge. He was a regular after that and I start developing feelings for him. He told me he didn't have time to get a girlfriend because he balanced his time looking after his disabled mother and spending time with his friends, and couldn't fit dating in there. If he got needy he would hire a worker, but he'd never been a regular with one like he was for me. Eventually we agreed to go on a date. Then we went on more. Then I stopped my work. Then I met his mother. Then we moved in together. Then we talked about getting married and having kids. We had 5 years together, 2011 to 2016, before he was diagnosed with cancer. I watched him waste away for 2 years after that until he died. His mother died weeks afterwards. I miss him more than he could have ever known. We were going to spend the rest of our lives together and I loved him so much, and everything got ripped away from us. It's been 2 years since he died and I've tried to date but it feels wrong and I don't think I'm ever gonna love anyone again. I don't even want to have intercourse with anyone because even though I was an escort once it became a really sacred I guess thing between me and him. I spend every day wanting him back but I know I'm never going to see him again. Ironically I ended up in the only healthy relationship I've ever been in. We just clicked on our first date laughing and having so much fun and felt like best friends after the second date. We are getting married soon. My boyfriend is so smart, so hardworking, and such a good dad. He's so sweet and nurturing to me. He's actually the only boyfriend who has treated me like an actual person and cares about actually knowing who I am. Being a worker is not what most people imagine. They think it's getting treated like garbage by perverted, hideous sadists. Just gritting your teeth to get through horrible disgusting experiences. I mostly only met guys who were divorced, worked from home, and new to the area, just hadn't had any luck on dating apps. They were all normal guys with good educations and a good head on their shoulders, just lonely, or too busy or not interested in having a girlfriend at the moment. I only slept with guys I enjoyed spending time with. It was actually a big step up from the guys I had normally dated. The few people who did treat me like a piece of garbage to throw away were people in my life who judged my choice. I was a regular customer of a cam girl back some time ago. After few stints I gradually started telling her not to take off her clothes and just talk to me. I loved her personality. She gave me her Skype, and I thought, okay, and after 1 or 2 Skype meetings I asked her for her PayPal to transfer the money. She was pretty angry because she thought this was a friendship or a dating call, and she said she liked my weirdness and general demeanor. We continued Skyping for 2 months more, and now we are actually friends. I worked as a dancer in LA and I met my husband at the club I worked at. We got married last year and have a 2-year-old. We are madly in love and no one knows how we actually met, haha. Our life is beautiful together. Most people don't realize most of this work is actually just getting to know someone very intimately. Lots of clients just want to talk, to have a bond, to forget something. Sometimes that bond is simply business, but it's no surprise that people do fall in love. I had my first romantic encounter with another woman when I was working as an escort, and I now identify as a gay woman. I think she was a nurse or worked at a hospital. She seemed like she was really struggling with a lot of things emotionally, like she was in a pretty dark place at the time. I was too. She made a lot of comments about how she didn't really have any friends and that she was so exhausted, but she was so beautiful. I only saw her that one night, which was over 6 years ago, but I do think of her often, and hope she's okay. I think I'm the age she was now, and I really don't have any friends or a life outside of work, so I feel like I can now look back on that weird night from the other perspective. I worked briefly as a semi-escort. He was an old friend who revealed himself to be into me. At the time I had a worker account on Twitter, and even though I told him up and down that I didn't want to take advantage of his feelings for me because I would never reciprocate, lesbian, he insisted he wanted to buy from me. It eventually rolled into a sugar baby-esque relationship where he gave me an incredibly modest sum of money a month. Again, I kept my distance. If he wanted some nudes or anything graphic, whatever, sure. But whenever he wanted to envision intercourse between us, I told him flat I wouldn't enjoy it and didn't desire to sleep with him. It seems cruel now, but he was my friend, and I respected him too much to give him any kind of false hope. However, things still turned for the worst and I could see him holding on to these fantasies, so I made some distance and the deal eventually tapered off. I am still upset about it, though distantly. What bothers me the most about it is that it may be an a-hole move to blame him, but his naivety got in the way of what was otherwise an okay agreement. I would have even accepted if he said, I can't keep my feelings out of this, let's stop. That would have been preferable to me having to ditch because he was picturing a romantic future. This is a story from Relationship Advice. I took on this client about a year ago. I was immediately struck with how handsome he was. As I got to know him, he showed himself to be a kind, sweet, charismatic, utterly brilliant person. He is always gentle. I never had to enforce any boundaries with him. Over the last year I have come to look forward to visits with him above any of my other clients. If there's a scheduling conflict, I will give him the priority. Lately I have been more intimate with him than my other clients, cuddles, kissing, hugs, and other things I don't do with my other clients. I love my overnights with him. We have long deep talks about everything, we have a lot of shared interests and we just get along really well. I feel very safe with him. I am falling in love with him. It's never happened to me before. I have always kept emotions separate from my work, but I can't help it with him. I will spend time with him I don't bill him for. I spend extra time with him and just love to be with him. I've been spending time with him casually, going on dates, I guess, for lack of better word, that I'm not billing for either, and the lines are starting to become very blurry. I don't know what to do. I think I want to move the relationship from professional to personal. Truth is, it's already becoming personal to me, but I can't imagine he would be okay with my work if I was his girlfriend. I am afraid of being rejected by him and ruining our work relationship. I think I would give this up to be with him, but that presents a whole new set of problems for me in finding a new career. I don't know what to do. Do I go for it? Risk rejection and ruining our professional relationship? Do I give up my career for him if he says yes? I don't think I could continue this if I was with him personally. Do I just keep silent and continue our relationship as is? Or do I drop him as a client altogether? I was never looking for a guy to save me, but I can't help what I'm feeling for him. FYI, his wife died in an accident 3 years ago. Edit, I'm about to leave for lunch with him. I'm not going to bring it up yet, but I do intend to ask him if he ever sees himself getting married again. Edit 2, lunch was nice. We had a good time. I did ask him if he felt like he could ever be married again. He said 3 years ago the answer would be a hard no, but now he wasn't so sure. Then he asked me if I ever saw myself getting married, and I had a similar answer. I told him I asked him if he wanted to come to dinner at my place tonight, not work, personal. He said he's like that. I'm going for it. Update: we had met for lunch. This was sort of a normal thing for us lately, and we had a nice chat. I posed to him the question of if he ever saw himself falling in love and marrying again. He said after his wife died he didn't think it would be possible, but now he thinks he might be able to with the right person. Then he followed up with a question about if I would ever think about leaving the biz and getting married. And I sorta answered the same, with the right person, followed by a pointed stare. He had to go back to work by this point, and I invited him to my home for dinner. This was a first. He has never been to my home. I don't bring clients back there, are only friends. I hoped that sent a strong signal to him. I went back home and started getting ready. I had to go shopping for some things and get the place ready to have a guest over. I called my friend up. She knows about this guy and has been on the same page as Reddit, pushing me to make a move and settle down into something more normal. I told her about the Reddit post and said I was making the jump. I also let her know I wanted to take her up on her offer. I called up my upcoming appointments and canceled. I said something had come up and I wouldn't be available. I'm out. I'm done regardless of what happened with him if I can't get my head in the game anymore, and I'm getting too personal. Plus now I am realizing I want to be in a relationship and I can't separate intercourse from my feelings like I thought. It's time to call it. This isn't what I want anymore. This choice was for me, not him. Even if things didn't work out with him, I realized I really did want to be in a committed relationship with someone. Final update: I got my shopping done and got dinner going, set the place up nice and romantic, and got myself dolled up nice and sexy and got ready to have him over. He came by at around 7. He had flowers for me and a bottle of wine. I invited him. He said he wasn't sure if he should bring payment or not and just did. I told him that wasn't necessary, he wasn't here as a client. I don't bring clients to my home. I was really hoping he was getting the hint. Dinner was going nicely, we had our usual rapport, but I could tell he was a little perplexed about what this was all about. So I put on my big girl panties, gathered my courage, and shoot my shot, as you all put it. I told him I was dropping him as a client. He looked surprised and hurt. He wanted to know why. What did he do wrong? Did something happen? I assured him it wasn't about him. I was leaving the biz and dropped all my clients. I told him about the job I took and he wished me good luck. He said I was attractive and charming and he was sure I would do well in sales. He said he was going to miss me. I took a big deep breath and said, "You don't have to miss me if you don't want to," and then I spilled it. He was the only client I brought home to tell in person. I laid it all out, all the things I mentioned in the post. How I felt about him and how I didn't want to be his escort anymore. I wanted to be his girlfriend. I said I understand he paid me to leave and not stick around, and now I was asking to stick around and I would understand if he didn't want to continue on. He said, "Who told you that?" That he paid me to keep coming back, not to leave. He said he felt it too, but he wasn't sure if it was appropriate to ask me that. He was still hurt over his wife and that he wasn't even sure if he was ready, but that some of the best things in his life he started when he wasn't sure if he was ready. He asked me if I was okay with being with someone who was still hurting over his ex. I told him I could work with it and that I wasn't trying to replace her. We kissed. I led him into my bedroom and we made love. We spent some time after in each other's arms talking about what comes next. He offered to help me make the transition, but I told him I wanted to try and do this on my own and not rely on him. I appreciated his offer, and if I needed the help I would ask, but I need to try on my own at first. He respected that. I told him that things would change now. As his girlfriend I would have expectations of him I never had as an escort. He was okay with that. I told him I never asked or cared if he saw other women before, but now I wanted monogamy. I would give it, and I wanted it in return, so if he was seeing other escorts that would have to end, and I reminded him I dropped my clients. He said that wasn't a problem. I was the only one. He spent the night with me and left this morning. I'm excited, elated and terrified all at once. My whole life has drastically changed in just a day. I didn't intend to move this fast, but once this train started rolling it seemed like there was no stopping it. As a final thought, I want to say that this isn't normal. If you see workers, please don't think this is the norm, and that the women you see may also fall in love with you. While I'm sure it happens and I've heard from others who are in similar positions to mine, it's really not the norm. If you're considering this work because you think you can find Prince Charming, know this outcome is very unusual. Oh, and I hated Pretty Woman, by the way. I never thought it would be me one day. Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos. Click the right box for the Radio TTS playlist and let us know what the next video should be about.